In this video, we're going to cover selecting foreground objects. After you have uploaded your photo and set the scale like we did in the previous video, you'll see a new set of buttons appear here to the left. The first button simply says foreground, and the purpose of this is to basically outline or create a mask around any objects that are in the foreground of your image. Now, we really only need to worry about objects that are in front of any roofing area in our image. Technically, this deck or this tree would be considered in the foreground of the picture, but they are not obstructing our view of the roof, so we don't need to worry about them. What we do need to worry about here are things like these skylights, any vents, the chimney, satellite. We have all these different objects that are in the foreground or in front of the roofing. By identifying these objects as part of the foreground, the visualizer will subtract each area from the roofing layer once we create it. So essentially, anything that we want to show through the roofing, we need to mask off or outline as part of the foreground. Here's a quick example of how this works. In this photo, I did not mask off or define anything as a foreground object, and as you can see, this looks a little ridiculous. In this photo, you'll see what it looks like with the foreground objects outlined. Now, the section of roofing that I outlined here is the same in both photos. The only difference is that by identifying the foreground objects, the visualizer will subtract those areas from the roofing layer. One more thing to note here, and this is kind of just a preference of mine, but I will typically only mask off the major foreground objects, and I don't always worry about things like these small pipe vents or a small tree branch, as they can be a little difficult to outline sometimes. So let's walk through this really quick. I'm going to click on the foreground button and the crosshairs will show up as my cursor. We'll start with the skylights, and I'm going to click to set my anchor points and basically just create an outline or mask around each one. After you complete the outline or mask, you'll still be able to edit the shape or move each individual anchor point. Sometimes it's best to just set your anchor points quickly and then zoom in and move them where they need to go with a little more precision. So let's zoom back out to 100%, and we now have these other buttons in the sidebar. We can click done, and that will take us back to the previous set of buttons. But if you have more foreground objects to outline, just click the foreground button again and then click the add to foreground button, and you'll be able to continue adding to the foreground layer. You'll need to click this button after every shape or outline you complete in order to start another foreground mask. Now, this chimney goes beyond the roof line, but I don't need to worry about outlining this portion because there won't be any roofing placed here. If this ridge line was higher than the chimney in this photo, then we would obviously outline the top portion more precisely. You only need to worry about the portion of the object that is directly in front of the roofing plane. Let's outline a few of the other objects here, and I'll just speed this up a little bit. Just as an FYI, you can come back and tweak any of these outlines after you've superimposed a roofing product by just clicking on the foreground button again. However, this option will not be available if you come back and open the project as a saved project. And now that we have every object we want set as part of the foreground, we're ready to start working on the roofing.